Our mission here is simple: life change through broken chains. We know when you get a revelation of who God is, it'll cause a revolution in your life, resulting in freedom from addiction. At Chainbreakers, we go from desperation to restoration through the 12 steps and the power of Jesus Christ. Through his power, we become chain breakers. We invite you to join us. If you're not a Christian, please know you're wanted and very welcome here. You don't have to believe before you can belong. And we're just so happy to have you amongst us tonight. Our message is hope, freedom, and new life in Christ. And our promise is redemption, full restoration, and abundant recovery. We aim to help you build a life you don't need to escape from. Our destiny is to help you reach yours. Welcome to the family. Also, we use different resources here at Chainbreakers if it's your first time here, like the Bible, the AA Big Book, some Celebrate Recovery sometimes. So we want to make it clear we do use their literature, but we are not an AA or NA meeting. We have respect for their traditions. So we will pass the basket for donations to help cover weekly expenses. This includes free literature and gospels we give to patients in treatment centers for H&I. Sam, I just can't forget, so I got to say it now. I got to get you the stuff for H&I tonight. Don't leave until I forget it. Sorry. Those who know me know I will not remember that by the end of this meeting. Okay. So if you're watching online and you would like to donate, you could click the link. It'll take you directly to our donation page. Every dollar helps, and we thank you for your contributions. We encourage sponsorship. A sponsor is someone who will take you through the 12 steps. We also encourage you to get a phone list to build a support network. If you're willing and able to be a sponsor, can you please raise your hands and keep them up for a moment? Okay, a couple in the back there. Thank you for your service. Do we have any newcomers or visitors to the group for the first time that would like to introduce themselves? Go ahead. Kurt, welcome, welcome. Go ahead. Amanda, welcome. Hey, girl. Anyone? Go ahead. Rob, welcome. All right, welcome everybody. Let's see here where we're at. If you find it uncomfortable or difficult connecting, there's a prayer card on the table there, a connection card. If that's difficult for you, you know you need to get connected, but you're a little more like introverted and it's hard for you to reach out. You could fill that out and just check off the box that says have someone reach out to me, and we'll be happy to call and break that ice for you to make it a little easier for you to get connected here. Also, if you're new here, we encourage you to fill out that connection card or check in on the GCCC app, or you could text Chainbreaker to the number that's on the frames there. And all you have to do, once you put your name in one time, you're registered. And then when you walk in the room, you just open the app and there's a button that says, I'm here, you click it. What that helps us to do is one of the ways that we serve you here at Chainbreakers is through the ministry of prayer. And so, you know, from that list of names that I get, we have a prayer team and we pray over you by name. So we want to be able to pray for you. You know, the best defense, especially against like the obsession of the mind and what we're dealing with, right, is a good offense, right? And so prayer is our offensive weapon, right, against the enemy. If we wait until we're in trouble to pray, we're already in trouble. We just don't know it. So we really want to be able to pray for you. So we encourage you to fill that out. Also, if you're new, we encourage you to bring it to the back next steps table after the meeting. I'll be back there where we'd love to give you a Chainbreakers mug just to thank you for coming out tonight and to welcome you to the family. And then if you have specific prayer requests, there's a section at the bottom. You can write your specific prayer request, put it in the basket as it goes around. And if you want prayer tonight, you can also come to the next steps table and we will pray for you and pray over you right there. All these tools are optional. We fully respect your choice to remain anonymous. If you want to get involved, awesome. If you don't want to get involved, you know what we say here at Chainbreakers, get involved anyway. To make Chainbreakers your home group and get a commitment, you can sign up at the back next steps table or find any home group member. Can home group members please raise your hands? Home group, represent. All right. Thank you for your service. Our church here at Gloucester is what our senior pastor calls a church for the rest of us. When I heard that, I didn't quite know what it was, but I knew that I was that. So he's awesome. And we encourage you to come out to church. We have 3 services, Saturday at 6 and Sundays at 9 and 11. We actually have baptisms this weekend. So if you would like to be baptized, come see me at that back next steps table. We already have Dana is getting baptized at the 11 o'clock on Sunday. So you won't be walking alone as the only chain breaker in there. So come and we want to celebrate that. Okay, let's see here. That was my only ministry announcement. If you checked in, say check. All right. So let's see here. Oh, and last but certainly not least, we love our global family so much. If you're new watching, please let us know what your name is, where you're from, because we'd love to welcome you. We also encourage you to like and subscribe on both the Facebook and YouTube channels. It's at Chainbreakers Recovery. We're live on both platforms. And we ask you, please, if you're open about your recovery, go ahead and share the meeting so we could share hope, recovery, and the gospel. Okay, so again, if you came in a little late, my name's Angelina, and we've been going through the big book, and we have arrived at There Is a Solution. How many of you are grateful that there is a solution? So if you need a packet, slip your hand up. We'll have someone bring it to you. Okay, you guys are ready. Yes, let's go. All right. So, all right, I'm going to flip over here. So you'll see there's some notations there. Italics, you'll see that's just the Chainbreaker commentary and correlating scriptures. We read the big book chapter as it is in text. So you'll see the difference there, just to highlight that. And if you're with us on Global, and you have a big book, we are in chapter 2. There is a solution. Okay, so let's take a look at this. There is a solution. So A means one, right? There's not like an option solution. There's one solution, A. And we know that spiritual awakening from the 12 steps, that is the solution that the big book authors, Narcotics Anonymous, essentially every 12-step fellowship you will see, it's a common problem and a common solution, right? So a solution. What is the solution? It is a spiritual solution, because what we suffer from is a spiritual problem, right? So a spiritual problem requires a spiritual solution. And that is the core, right, of what the problem is. We'll get into it as we go, and we'll see the 2 symptoms of the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body. But these are the symptoms, right, of an underlying heart issue, really, right? And that is, our spirit, which is restless, irritable, discontent, unhappy, never satisfied, right? That was my state before I ever put a drink or drug in my body. I don't know about you guys. So when I found drugs and alcohol, I had found my solution. Notice I said my solution, not the solution, right? And guess what? That solution, it worked for a really long time. I will not lie to you, right? When I would hear people like, oh, what do they say? Like, my worst day sober was better than my best day drunk and high. So like, I'd always be like, well, I don't know about you. I did have a lot of fun before, like it wasn't fun anymore, right? So like, we don't lie about that. But what happens is we have fun, then we have fun with problems. In the end, all we got is problems. So that means now I need a new solution, right? And here we have a solution, which is a spiritual awakening. How do we gate, right? And how are we aimed towards having this, right? Well, the vessel used here is the 12 steps. So again, in every fellowship, we see in that 12th step is having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, right? Not having had sobriety, not having had clean time as a result of the steps, right? It's a spiritual awakening, right? So what is that? That's goal, that's mission. So everything we're doing here is the foundation for the spiritual awakening, because that is the solution, right? A meaning one. And so I'm going to give you the definition of solution here. It's in there, right? The definition is the means to solving a problem, right? And so what are we solving? A spiritual problem, right? Here's the thing. Some people deny the problem, right? And I was both of these, but then some people deny the solution, right? And there's always that trap door. And luckily, God's right there at every trap door. You know, it becomes, when do we want to stop getting lower? And with Christ, he is the solution, right? And it was the solution to the big book authors as well. We discussed over the last few weeks, Bill and Bob, they came, Bill's sponsor was from the Oxford groups, that was Christian groups. These principles, the 12-step principles, they're biblical principles. They use the Sermon on the Mount and the book of James to write much of the big book. So we knew what the solution was here when we looked at the recovery rates of 75% versus 1 in 10 today. The only difference is, right, who they called on for that solution, right? So a means to solving a problem. So what does that mean? That means if I have a problem, there is a means to solving it here. Okay, so let's get in here. So we of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And this we was the first 100 men and women, right? When they wrote this. So that's who that we is referring to. Of Alcoholics Anonymous, know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Why was Bill declared hopeless? Because Dr. Silkworth, when we were in the doctor's opinion, right, he was the lead addiction specialist in the country at the time, is said to have seen over like 30,000 patients. There wasn't rehabs and detoxes on every corner then, right? If you were an addict or an alcoholic, you end up, right, in the psych ward with wet brain. That was like the solution then. So Dr. Silkworth is the first doctor. He's the lead specialist. He worked at Towns Hospital in New York, that kind of discovers this allergy of the body, right? This was a lot of weeks ago before Bill's story, but we had looked at, we really want to take Dr. Silkworth's diagnosis and said remedy into account. Okay. So, when I would come into some of the rooms, I'm like, oh, I don't need that. I don't need that. Right. I'm different from them. I don't like this piece. So that's not true for me. These are things that I would tell myself, that kept me in bondage longer than I could have been. So being if say Jackie finds out she has this rare form of cancer, right? And she goes to the top specialist treating that form of cancer in the United States, right? And that doctor tells her what her problem is and what the solution is, right? Would we take that opinion as absolute truth, right? We probably, that opinion would hold a lot of weight, right? A lot more weight than say a general physician or, a sponsor or any of that, right? So this is the doctor's opinion, the one who has seen over 30,000 patients. Okay. So he is the one where he says just as hopeless as Bill, because this doctor then says that people to the degree of that have the brain of an addict, as in Bill, what does that mean? We have an obsession of the mind, right? An obsession to drink and use that does not respond to reason. So I can have every reason not to do it again, right? But I do it again anyway. It's not because I don't love my kids, right? A lot of times we end up doing these things towards the end and we're doing it literally against our own will, crying as we're doing it because we don't even want to do it in our true heart, right? We are driven by an obsession that does not respond to reason. This is why our willpower, all the choices that we've made to not pick up avail us nothing, because it has nothing to do with willpower. And it's only God's power that can overcome it, right? So if it centers, the core is the spiritual malady, but the addiction, right? The core is the spiritual malady, the addiction centers in the mind, right? It is the malady that really drives the obsession of the mind, right? Thinking that something outside is going to fix the inside, right? This is an inside out job. And so, excuse me. So, this is what Dr. Silkworth says about Bill, that he is, that to the degree that it is in Bill, okay? So ask yourself, do I have an obsession of the mind, right? And an allergy of the body. What is an allergy of the body? That means even though I tell myself it'll be just one, it's never just one. Once we pick up, it sets off an intense craving for more. And no matter how many times we tell ourselves just this one time, it hasn't. He also goes on to say, if this has ever occurred in an individual, it does not ever occur in the average temperate drinker, drug user. So if what the doctor here is essentially saying, if that's ever happened to you, right, you have the mind of an addict and alcoholic, right? So, and here's the thing, the only one who can change the science of the brain is the creator behind it. I don't have the power to stop, dopamine receptors being set off and all, because it needs that. We need that to feel those. That's where our feelings of being happy and contentment comes from. And we lack that. And so, what happens is when the spirit is wanting that, it triggers that release of dopamine. But these I don't want to get too lost in the science, but like the brain, it holds memory, right? And so it will remember what is going to make that feel better. So we can't control, right, neurons and all these chemicals going on in our brain. We can't control that. I could sit there and tell, talk to my receptors and everything all I want. It's not going to make them not do it, right? We would agree. So this is where the doctor is seeing this, right, and saying it's hopeless, seemingly, right? Hopeless, because we have a mind that tells us we can, but we have a body that can't because of the allergy. That's where we have that hopeless condition, okay? So where he's saying here, he's as hopeless as Bill. So Dr. Silkworth then goes on to say, those of this variety, right, are hopeless, and only what he has seen like a spiritual awakening, right, can combat it. Now, we want to go back to the truth of the source. Okay, well, that's not me, right? We want to remember that this is the doctor, right, the specialist stating this. And I want you to think about this. If you're the best, specialist in the country treating some kind of disease, I think we probably could all agree that if you as your specialist, your professional opinion is like, yeah, there's nothing I could do to help you, you're hopeless. Would not say that unless it was absolutely true, because that would be really bad for his reputation. Come see me, I can't do anything for you. So what we all agree then, for him to be able to say that, right, he has to have a strong opinion, right, based on expert judgment and training, right, on what this prognosis is. The doctor says it is he says no man-made solution, no medical solution. That means no pill, no puff, no drink, no nothing is going to fix it, right? We don't have the power, and it is only God's power, right, that can renew that. And what's awesome is because, it centers in the mind, right? But when we're saved, we now have the mind of Christ. He says, we do not have a spirit of fear. We have a love, power, and a sound mind, right? We have the power of love, power, and a sound mind. That's what we need. Addiction centers in the mind, right? But we got to fix the spirit man first. When you fix the core, the symptoms will dissipate, right? Just like you treat bronchitis with an antibiotic, the symptoms of the cough and the runny nose dissipate when we treat the core. So this is about treating the core. So this is the solution to what? The core problem of addiction and alcohol, a spiritual malady. So this is where the doctor, where they're saying here, just as hopeless as Bill. Why? Right? Because of the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body. Do I want to go there? I'm just going to do a quick flip. So, oh yes, I am going to. So just as hopeless of Bill, right? So nearly all have recovered, ED, not recovering, not I'm just a sick alcoholic for the rest of my life. I'm not going to get better. Recovered, right? This is the program, right? If you remember in the forewords we talked, it says here, this is the basic text to the 12-step program, right? In which all other 12-step fellowships, right, are the same steps. So the program, not meetings, the program, where we find what? A solution, A1, right, says that this is the basic text. So this is the program. And what are they saying? Right? The author, this is where the program is. Does it say recovering? Right? Does it, right? We don't, as a man speaks, so is he, right? That's what the Bible tells us. So if I think I'm just sick, I'm never going to get better, I'm never going to get over it, I'm always going to have this, guess what? I'm going to now live that out experientially. The biggest things that you will believe that anybody ever says about you is what you say about yourself. Okay. So the program, not Angelina, right? This is the program saying what? Recovered. Okay. Recovered. They have all trying to solve, have solved the drink problem, right? So I'm just going to flip real quick to pages 84 and 85. You don't have it there because it's in this big book. And so recovered, right? So what does that mean? Here we go. So after we get to step 10, right? There's 12-step promises. There's promises of each step as we're going through the work, right? But to get the promise, we have to do the work, right? Also, and this is, again, right, it's biblical principles. This is what's known in the Bible. If you're reading through the Bible, it's called the if-then, right? So there's promises that are just ordained. And then there's other promises, right, where we have to do the work to get the promise, right? If you seek, then you will find. Make sense? So I'm not going to find if what? I'm not seeking. So that same principle is here in the work, right? If we do it, we don't wait for the miracle to happen, we work for it, right? We'll be waiting our way all the way to rock bottom. It's a program of action. We have to get into action, okay? So this is what it says here. So now to get this promise, we do the work, right? And so it says this, and here's the 10-step promises. We have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, right? Or drugs. It's the same core problem. By this time, sanity will have returned, right? We will seldom be interested in liquor. Tempted, we recoil as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. Why? Because God's removed the obsession. We will see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given us, right, by God through the work, right? God will do what I can't do, not what I won't do. So without any thought or effort on our part, it just comes. This is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us, i.e. recovered. Okay? 10-step promise. All right. So Coming back here. Okay. So we are average Americans, all sections of this country and many of its occupations represented, right? So all social distinctions, like when it comes to this disease, it's Yale to jail, right? There's no distinction. But what's also, right, where it says actually in the book that God, alcohol is no respecter of persons. Well, guess what? Scripture also tells us that God is no respecter of persons as well. So anyone can have the problem, but anybody can have the solution as well. So we are people of different social, religious backgrounds. We are people who would normally not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful, right? Because we know what we've been through. We can connect on a different level because we understand, because we've been there. Right? We are like passengers of a great linear, the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when a comadre, oh gosh, all right, hold on, Ange. Okay, so take note. If you remember when we began Bill's story, right, this is written in the 30s, right? And so the Titanic thing is fresh. So we'll see some of these analogies here, right? Kind of like looking, so like this was like a fresh thing where they're writing here, right? And so where it says this, that we're like passengers of a great linear, that's a ship, right? The moment after rescue from shipwreck, right? When I can't say the word, what's camaraderie? Did I say it right? Camaraderie. Okay. Joyousness and democracy pervade the vessel, from steerage to the captain's table. This is why it's good to have someone take you through this, because it was written so long ago, like a lot of words, like there's the words now my kids are saying that, right? But look, I'm asking all these questions, right? And this is like in my lifetime. So, and then there's words we use today that meant something different then, right? And so like if this was back when I was born and someone said, I'm going to the crib, right? You're going to get a baby. Right? But now if I'm saying I'm going back to the crib, right? I'm going home. So they can mean different things, right? And so we're looking at this. So with that being fresh, right? So what's the saying, right? So the steerage, this was the cheap seats on a if you look up a ship, right? That's what they called the cheap seats. So like, has everyone seen Titanic? Am I outdating myself? Yes, most? Okay, I'm not that bad. Okay. So like, you know, Jack and Rose, well, Rose would be like the captain's table, right? And Jack's like the bottom, right? But what's it saying here, right? But unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy in escape from disasters does not subside as we go in our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element, right? Notice not the element, one element. What are we talking about here? Fellowship. One element. Okay. In a powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. So like, I'm sure if, you know, someone who survived the Titanic ship, right, and they're talking to a therapist, like therapist is going to help them work through that. But then they got together and had coffee with someone who was on that boat and survived the same thing. They're going to connect in a way that nobody else could understand. Right. So this is the analogy that Bill's using here. Right. And it's funny because, you know, Jesus taught a lot in analogies, right? They're called the parables. So it's a fictional story to explain a spiritual truth. Right. And so this is what he's now saying, right? So, so again, the fellowship, right, is not the solution. The solution is the spiritual awakening. The fellowship is meant to support us as we're going through the process, right? And it's where we encourage one another. Iron sharpens iron, right? But the real work is inner, right? And so, all right, as we are now joined, where are we at here? I went off my notes. Okay, here we go. So, unlike the feelings, I think I officially need glasses, you guys. Okay. The tremendous, I've lost my way. Where's the tremendous at? Is it in the middle one? Oh, here we go. All right, I found it. Okay. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution, right? So we've discovered a common solution, which is what? That spiritual awakening as a result of the 12 steps. We have a way out which can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action, right? What does, right? And what does Christ teach us, right? Of brotherly love and harmonious action, right? This is the great news of this book carries to all who suffer from alcoholism, right? And so, we're going to look at a few correlating scriptures here that are going along with this reading of harmonious action, right? And so let's see here. So, and this is what the book, this is great news, right? This book carries to those who what? Suffer from alcoholism. What does that mean? Have you been suffering? Right? If so, here's the great news. We have a common solution. We don't have to stay sick and suffering. Okay? So, if this is you, so those who suffer from alcoholism, so if that's you, say, this is me. Okay. So as we're going through this too, and in the actual big book, right, you're going to see in pages 17 to 24, they're going to tell us what the problem is. And then from 25 on, they're going to tell us what the solution is to that problem. So let's look at some correlating scriptures here that is going to go along with this, where it's talking about a harmonious action, right? And this kind of goes along with what we were saying with the if-then statements, right? Some of the I'm forgetting the word, but we have promises that are covenantal, right? Like if you accept Christ, we're all children of God. But then there are circumstantial, right? Which is if I seek, right? Then I find. So there's two different types of promises here. So we talked about this to get the promises from the work. We have to do the work. And that means what? Action. So we're going to look at a few of this action, what God's word has to say about that. And so the first one here is James 4:17. And it says, so whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him, it is sin, right? So guess what? My husband can pick up a beer on the beach and it's not sin for him, right? I can pick up a beer on the beach and I'm definitely sinning way more than that one beer, and you're gonna have to bail me out, right? For me, it is sin. So James 2:18 says this. So if you know in your conscience there's something you shouldn't be doing, that's the Holy Spirit nudging you, right? That's your conscience telling you that this is going against, you know, what God has put in your heart. So James 2:18 says this, but someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. What's the works we're doing here? The inner work, right? Through the steps, which the Bible, it tells us, right? To self-examine, right? I need to see me. And I have a lot of blind spots to see in me, right? And so this work helps to highlight where God wants to grow me. Okay. It's about unbecoming like the world and becoming like Christ. Right. And when we are walking in God's will, right, and doing those ifs to the thens, right, well, then we get God's best for our lives. Right. So God's will is God's best for our lives. Okay. So James 2:14-17 says, what good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works, right? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warm and filled, without giving them the things that needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead, right? And so this is what the big book, I think we're going into it more. We might have already read it. It's in More About Alcoholism, or There Is a Solution. I think it's in More About, it says it's in Dr. Spinian. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. What does that mean? That means like, just keep coming back, right? But I'm not reaching out to you to see how you're doing, right? What is that? That's just frothy emotional appeal, right? And so what they're saying here, like, what is if you're having faith, it's going to work, but I'm not doing that, right? Our actions will demonstrate what's going on in the inner man, so that we can't fool ourselves. Because again, right, I need to see me. The biggest enemy I have is the one in me, right? So James 1:20, that's why it's a program of action, right? And that's what this work helps us do. And so at step 1, we're like totally selfish, right? And then by step 12, we've gone from selfishness to servanthood. And that's the goal there. So James 1:23-25, for if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man who looks intently at his natural face in the mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he looks like. Right? But the one who looks perfectly into the law of liberty, freedom, right? What are these steps, right? Freedom, and perseveres. It takes some perseverance to go through this, right? There's stuff. I'm actually doing another 4-step right now, right? And it's going way deeper, and it's like an onion each time. Like this, where I'm at now, it's like so deep. It's revealing strongholds and all kinds of stuff, right? This is where it helps us, so that, right, what blooms on the outside is Christ. And so that's what this work helps us do. And then James 2:26, it says, for as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also, right? So what is works? Doing the work. I can say I want to change, right? But am I doing the work, right? And the good news is we want you in here, right? Like, we don't get better and then come, right? We come to get better, and we're all supporting one another. But again, right, God's will, what's that? God's best for my life, right? I want to live God's best for my life, right? He went through a lot for me to live my best life, right? And so we should honor that and want to do the best with it. So faith without works is dead. We do what we can do, and then God will do what we cannot do and expel the solution, right? So we have a part, God has a part, God won't do our part, right? We have a part, God has a part, God won't do my part. Our part and what we can do is go through the steps, okay? So an illness of this sort, we've come to believe it an illness, right? And remember, we went in the spiritual experience. I encourage you to read that on our YouTube channel. There's all the ones. It really goes into the medical view on the illness. So I encourage you to go back and look at that, right? We have come to believe it an illness, right? And now it's proven today, right? This is what Dr. Silkworth is starting to see, right? Today, it is proven because there is the medical component to it, right? If a person has cancer, because it involves those about us in a way that no other human sickness can, okay? And so let's look at the definition here of an illness. To give us a depthier kind of understanding here. So it says a disease or period of sickness affecting the body or mind. Addiction affects both mind and body. The physical allergy of the body, right? Can't have just one. And the obsession of the mind, right? So a disease or period of sickness affecting the mind or their body. So when people will say it's not an illness, medically defined, it is. You're entitled to have that opinion, but medically defined, you are incorrect, right? Addiction affects both mind and body. The physical allergy of the body, right? That's that phenomenon of craving, where once I pick up, it sets off this intense craving for more. There's no off button, right? So those are the physical components. However, there's also the spiritual components, right? Okay. I'm seeing if I want to go there. So I want to see what page 64 of the big book says here. Very quickly. Oh, I think I know what it is. Okay. Here we go. Resentment's the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else, right? And that's why we got to get rid of these resentments and that when we get there. But from its stem, all forms of spiritual disease, right? disease, illness, spiritual disease. For we have not only been mentally and physically ill, mentally obsession, physically allergy, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, then we straighten out mentally, right? And physically. Why? Right? The symptoms dissipate because the core problem's been treated, right? We've given the bronchitis the antibiotics, so the runny nose and the cough is now gone. Cool? You're either taking it in or like and shut up. That's enough. Okay. So this is where it's saying that, where it is an illness, right? So let's see here. Okay, so if a person has cancer, all are sorry for him, and no one is angry or hurt, but not so with the alcoholic illness. For with it goes annihilation, right, of all things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all those lives, touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, right? And fierce resentment because, and I have it both, I have it, addiction also in other parts of the family members, like before it affected me. And it's like, if you really love me, you wouldn't do this anymore. Right. And then guess what? I became that person. And then guess what? It was my loved one saying to me, if you really love me, you wouldn't do this anymore. Right. With a misunderstanding of the disease, that it has nothing to do with our love for anybody. Okay. So it brings disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. So you can ask yourself here, right? Has addiction, again, this is all identifying the problem, right? We're being open-minded, right? To examine and explore what the problem is. So now I can relate my experience to the problem to properly diagnose myself, right? And so, and that's how we are able to diagnose ourselves. Do we have these symptoms and this core problem, right? And so you can ask yourself this, right? Okay, well, this is me. Now I'm asking myself, has addiction led to annihilation in my life? It did for me, okay? So if that's you, say, this is me. Okay. Has it engulfed the lives of others, right? And so there's this thing, it's called the circles of engulfment, right? And I have like my sponsees do it. And so it's like, say it's like Angelina here, right? And we see how many people it truly affects, right? And so like it affected my husband, right? And now that affected him at work, right? And then that affected our kids. And it affected my brother, right? Who affected his relationship with his wife. So and I don't know about you guys, but again, I can't see me, right? I literally thought, why do you care? The only person I'm hurting is me. And I believe that with my whole heart, right? Total denial, right? I could not see me. That's why we need help, right? So ask yourself, has this engulfed and involved other people, right? Are other people being hurt when we're doing what we're doing, thinking that we're just hurting us? Okay. So, because if it is, then that might be you. So if that's you, say, this is me. Okay, cool. So we hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or may be affected. There are many. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve. Why? Because we lie, right? Strangely enough, wives, parents, and intimate friends usually find us even more approachable than do the psychiatrist and the doctor, right? Why? Because they're lying to the doctor, right? But we can get honest with one another because we know we've been there. More importantly, we know the way out, right? So let me see. Okay. So, but the ex-problem drinker, say recovered, okay, very good. Drinker who has found this solution. What is this solution? A spiritual awakening to treat what? The spiritual malady, right? Who was properly armed with the facts about himself An incomplete understanding of the disease, I'll be there probably like 5, I'll cue you, will lead us to an incomplete solution. So if I don't understand the facts about what I'm suffering from, right? I don't understand the allergy of the body. I don't understand the obsession of the mind. Then I'm going to keep falling for the lie that this time I can have one, right? So when we're properly armed with the facts about ourselves, what is that? What it is I'm suffering from, okay? Can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. Let me see here. Oh yeah, I think I lost my place. Oh, here. Okay. So, give me a second. Okay. So, okay. So what are the facts that we need? Oh, so those were the 10-step promises. I didn't see. I was going right out of, but again, the ex-problem drinker. So we read that actually, right? We cease fighting anything, right? By 10, the obsession's been removed, right? To get the promise, we do the work. To be properly armed with the facts, right? The facts we need to understand the grave nature of the disease and the hopelessness of the spiritual malady, the mental obsession, symptom, physical allergy symptom. That willpower avails me nothing, that I've lost the power to choose. Ask yourself, have I seriously made a choice to not do it again and did it again anyway, right? That means you've lost your power to choose, i.e. the definition of powerlessness, to endure no choice. Okay. So if that's you, say, this is me. Okay. And beyond human aid. Until I understand this, sobriety cannot be accomplished because an incomplete understanding of the disease will lead to an incomplete solution. So that man who was making the approach has had the same difficulty, that he obviously knows what he is talking about. That is his whole deportment, right? And so here's the definition of deportment here, a person's behaviors or manners, right? So the man making the approach has had the same difficulty. He obviously knows what he's talking about, that his whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a man with a real answer, right? We've been there. I understand. Come on in. Like, this is why we invite people in, right? Because at one time we were that one, right? That he has no holier than thou attitude, right? And nothing whatever except the sincere desire to be helpful. There are no dues to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. All right, so we're going to look at this one last scripture here. You can cue that. We're looking at many taking up their beds and walking again. And this is in John 5:5-9. And Jesus heals a man that is crippled by the pool. So let's see what happens here. And so later, this is John 5:5-9. Later, Jesus went to Jerusalem for a special Jewish festival. In Jerusalem, there was a pool with 5 covered porches. In Aramaic, it is called Bethesda. This pool is near the sheep gate. Many sick people were lying on porches beside the pool. Some of them were blind, some were crippled, some were paralyzed. When I read this, I just picture like Kensington, right? And so one of the man lying there had been sick for 38 years. Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been sick for a very long time. So he asked him, "Do you want to be well?" And I believe that God is asking us the same way. Do we? Do we want to be well? Right? The sick man answered, "Sir, there is no one to help me get into the water when it starts moving. I try to be the first one in the water, but when I try, someone always goes in before I can." Then Jesus said, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Immediately, say immediately, the man was well. Here we go. he picked up his mat and started walking. Ready? What did we just see here, right? Many pick up their beds, right, and walk again. So essentially, when Jesus is saying here, pick up your mat, he's saying, right, I picture this as like clean up your mess, right? And this is what we do in steps 4 through 9 so that we can walk free, right, from addiction by the power of Jesus Christ working in us and changing our hearts and minds through the process. The man at the pool didn't see a way out. Life had dealt him a bad deck of cards. He literally could not get back up. What's our time, Jackie? 8:05. And so I'm going to kind of go with what we said before. I kind of want to give a little bit of context. So there's a show called The Chosen. It's amazing. And there's actually a scene from that. So I know we normally do worship. Tonight, we're going to switch up our order a little bit. So I am going to have to say goodnight to Facebook because we can't show the video there, but we love you guys. Look up that. It's right on YouTube. Look up the clip. We encourage you to do that. Let's give our Facebook family some love. We love you guys. And I want to give you guys some context for that.